Hello and welcome to our show, The Panel Says. This is your host for the show, Akanshi Kapil. For today's episode, we have with us Professor Srinivasan Tatachari. He is the chair of HR, OB and Communications at TAPME. Professor Tatachari holds an engineering degree in Electronics and Telecommunications from University of Mumbai. He completed his MBA in the year 2004 from IIM Bangalore. He also worked with Wipro at various positions for 13 long years. Then in 2007, he decided to follow his passion for HR and OB. To do so, he joined IIM Bangalore once again to pursue PhD in HR and OB. Later on, he became a full-time professor at Indian Institute of Management and thereafter a chair of HR, OB and Communications at TAPME. Let's hear the story of Professor Srinivasan Tatachari from himself. Let's welcome to our show Professor Srinivasan Tatachari.
Hi, Akanshi.
Hi, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good as well. The reason that I've invited you here is I wanted to share the journey that you have left past so many years and would like to inspire a lot of students who are aspiring for MBA. And there are many questions that arise in their minds and they're really unclear. So I wish there was a show when I was about to join an IIM, what to expect and what not to expect from the mouths of the expositors themselves. So the first question that I have for you. So you've handled a variety of roles at Wipro for almost like 13 years. Then you went on to pursue organizational behavior and human resource management from IIM Bangalore, followed by taking the role of OB and HR professor at IIM Udaipur. Tell us what inspired you to pursue OB and HRM after 13 years of corporate life. So that is something very life-changing, I would say, for anybody to just drop out of the corporate life and enter to studies and academics and then the rigorous program. So how was it for you?
Yeah, it had been a life-changing decision, after having been in corporate life for around 13 years at that point of time to, just drop it, let go of it and, follow your passion as, typically in a very cliched manner is said. It was quite a bit of a challenge, and I dropped into the PhD program. So that itself was a different challenge because there is no financial support at that point of time other than what the college paid as stipend. But you had to rely on your own funds of whatever you're saved across the previous job. Coming to why I did that, so as I was in Wipro for almost like 11, 12 years, that point of time, I was seeing a lot of, people joining in. I mean, hiring was, picking up quite a lot in the software sector. And so many people would come in and, there was a lot of difference in some sense that I could notice with the people coming in, right? So maybe it was a hint of the generation changing or something like that. So something sort of gave rise to curiosity in my mind to try and find out what how are these people different, how are the newcomers different, and what could explain their behavior at the workplace, etc. So that's the original, I would say, the seed that actually got me thinking in the area of human behavior. So and to try to figure out what's making people behave the way they do. And as part of that, I was also part of the MBA, at IIM Bangalore. So while I was at Wipro, I also did my MBA from IIM Bangalore. And after that, the first opportunity I got into a functional role, which was knowledge management. So it got me closer to this area of trying to understand people, because as a knowledge management evangelist, I had to actually understand the behavior of people in my department or in my vertical and try to convert them into using knowledge management systems and portals, right? So that already gave me a move towards my passion, and I think that's what triggered the whole thing in terms of understanding people. And yeah, so at some point of time, it reached saturation that I decided to leave and pursue it full time, because research meant that I would have to get out of corporate and get into academics. So I think that's basically what the trigger was.
So the second question that I have for you, like you have been a professor for 8 years now, I guess. So I would like you to share with us what kind of students you have encountered in terms of academic skills and the techniques or strategies you have adopted to make the subject interesting for students. Like how do you make your classes interactive and fun for students so they don't lose attention and whatever you're teaching is retained in their mind?
Okay. Well, I've always had very exciting groups of students, at both the places that I've taught so far. You have been one of them. I've also been lucky to be teaching a subject which actually lends itself very nicely to experimentation, to try and get people excited, curious, participate, right? So, in a sense, that subject itself lends itself very nicely to experimentation. So having enthusiastic students and having a subject which helps connect with that kind of excitement or enthusiasm, I think that has been what I have been able to leverage upon. So we have had activities in the classes. I do a lot of activities that come as part of the organizational behavior courses that I teach. So there's a lot of activities, a lot of fun that students actually enjoy, and they also learn while enjoying. So you might remember some of those things that we did in class. So one of the interesting activities is the division of the group into slippers, sandals, and shoes. I don't know if you remember that, right? So that's something that very impromptu kind of thing, very simple kind of thing, but it conveys a lot of rich understanding about people and people's behavior in groups. And I found that even last year, doing it online in a very different model also actually worked. So I had to convert that to a model which fit the online teaching environment. Right, so that's the kind of experimentation, that's the kind of innovation that I like to bring into my teaching, and I think people, students like it, and they seem to enjoy it. So I think that part is quite okay.
There's one more thing I would like to ask. So, what is a specific trait or skill that one should develop for being a good HR person? Or is it something that can be learned over time, or does it have to come to you naturally, or is it skill based, or is it more of an intuition based? What does it take to be a good HR?
Okay. Some part, if so, like we talk about leadership, I think some part, if it is there naturally as part of our, personality, I think that helps quite a bit, right? So in terms of someone who is able to empathize, with someone more easily, it's something that can be learned, right? But there's always a kind of level which, if you have it already, it definitely adds a big boost to you when you are actually getting into those kind of roles which require that as a specific skill set. But not if it's not there, it doesn't matter, because you can train yourself to actually empathize and be more alert to what's happening around you. So empathy is one of those kind of skills, and other is actually to be able to interact with people. Now again, that's again back to one of my favorite topics, that is the personality, introversion versus extroversion. So even if you're an introvert and you feel that it's going to be difficult to do that in terms of interacting with people, again, that's something that you can overcome, you can learn, and you can enhance your skills in that area. For someone who's an extrovert, it will come more naturally. So for that person, again, it starts off at a level which is much more advantageous, but doesn't mean that someone who doesn't have that cannot build it. Right? So I think some of these definitely are going to be helpful from a HR perspective, right? Someone who's able to actually connect with people, is able to empathize with people. I think this is top level. I mean, there are lots more that definitely would be required for being a good HR person, undoubtedly. But these are the two things that come to my mind at as a top of the requirement.
What qualities does joining a top B school require? And what are the habits that a student should adopt if wishing to start his or her preparations early?
Again, one thing I keep telling students is to have an open mind. Okay. So students who come in, either they come in from previous work experience, which means that they have been through a specific way of handling things, and they may not be students for many years. So they have to have an open mind to come back to a classroom environment, right? So to be able to absorb what's happening in the MBA environment, you have to open your mind. For those who are coming in from regular university style of teaching, again for them it's something that they have to overcome, which means that the teaching is going to be completely different, the learning is going to be completely different. So again, there needs to be an open mind there. So I think the first and foremost thing is to have a open mind approach when you come into the business school, because at least to a top business school, because the method of teaching is going to be completely different, right? It's not just learning by rote is going to help. It is not mugging up just before the exam that's going to help, because there's a lot of application, there's a lot of practical involvement, and there's a lot of teamwork, learning from other people. So it's a very different environment that students have to get used to. So open-minded approach is definitely, I think, the foremost that students need to have as they come in. The other thing is discipline, and I don't tire of telling this to even my sons, and definitely to the students also. You have to have discipline. There are a lot of distractions that happen in the 2 years of campus life. Again, we are not saying, or I'm not saying that you focus only on studies and forget everything else, but you have to have discipline in terms of what you're here for. I mean, you joined the MBA program for something, so you should not lose sight of that goal, for what you joined the MBA program, and to make sure that you pass out at a good level and achieve what you wanted to achieve out of the program. I think that should always remain your focus. And for the rest of the time, you plan around and enjoy with respect to whatever time you can make outside of that, right? So having that sense of prioritizing and balancing the time, I think that's also another thing that would be very important for a candidate who comes into the MBA program.
So in one of your articles on LinkedIn, you've mentioned yourself as a tech geek. So how do you think the online front has affected or favored the learning process for students? And what is your opinion? How did you prepare yourself for the same? Because it's a challenge. Nobody was prepared for 2020, but yet everybody hailed, and I would say nailed it. Everybody nailed the complete 2020 e-learning process. So all the schools and colleges, everybody is online now. So how do you think it has changed the front of academics for MBA or any other courses? Like, as a professor, could you shed some light on what are the pros and cons for teaching online, and how has it evolved over time?
Yeah. As with every situation, you can always see it from the perspective of it being a challenge or it could be an opportunity, right? So when it initially came upon us, it looked like it was a challenge, right? To be able to switch everything online, to be able to grab the attention of the students, and make sure that they are there in the classroom, the virtual classroom, and they're able to absorb as much as possible. So that definitely was a challenge, but looking at what more can be achieved, that becomes the opportunity there, right? The flexibility that the online platform provides, the ability to have recorded sessions, the ability to students, for them to play back those sessions whenever they want, which would not have happened in the normal offline classroom. And it's not a typical thing that happens in all places, right? So offline recording may not happen, but in this case it was allowed. And the flexibility of joining from any device, right? Any place in your home, any place that's comfortable to you, right? So those became, I think, the flexible portions. Of course, that had a cost to it. The whole online mechanism had a cost to it, which means that you are not there in the class with your classmates, right? So yeah, with your peers. So there is a sense of not being able to connect that much, but I think the technology allows for a lot of those things to happen. So we also did a lot of breakout rooms, in the classes, and like I told you, we converted the slippers and sandals exercise to the online, a very different version of that. And I've written about that on LinkedIn also. So I mean, whoever's interested can actually just look up my LinkedIn articles and see that one. But there also, so it is possible to convert. So wherever there are challenges, I think we can look at opportunities coming out of that. there are a lot of group activities that happen, a lot of case study related discussions that happen outside of the classroom, virtual classroom. I think that still provides for a lot of the connection. Of course, it's not going to be the same as face to face. I mean, I think that's something that we have to accept, and we have to overcome that. So to the extent possible, we have to maybe interact more. Students have to interact more outside of the class, setting, to be able to get to that level of bonding that they would have had in a campus classroom. Right? So those are things that students have to do on their own in terms of overcoming the online limitations. But I see that there has been a lot of flexibility that this whole system has brought in, and so going forward also, if there is need for classes to be available at any point of time, people are not able to attend, they would have a mechanism to be able to attend, or reach out to the recordings and things like that. So at least now I think colleges are well equipped to provide for those things. Whether they do it or not, that's again per institution choice. But those mechanisms now have been almost sort of set into motion in the last year. So there is there is scope for the colleges to actually allow for those kind of flexible mechanisms, right? So that's up to the colleges, of course, but I think opportunities are coming from those kind of technology dependence. In my case, if to answer that part of your question, again, like you said, that that LinkedIn post that I had put up details a lot of the changes that I did in terms of preparation. And I think my advantage is having been in the technology industry in my corporate life, and continuing to have that as a passion, continuously being on top of technology news and experimenting with a lot of things, and that gave me a good foundation to actually move very quickly into the teaching part. So again, I could leverage on whatever devices I already had. I had a tablet, I had I had my old system, I had my laptop. So I used multiple of those devices. I was actually using my iPad to actually write the case discussions. So that became my whiteboard, if you want to call it. And I had my PowerPoints also running from there. So I was writing on it. So it became very easy for me to transition into that particular model easily. The challenges, of course, were there because the platform was completely new in terms of understanding how the breakouts operate, how to get students into different groups, how to make sure that you can still empathize with the students while being across screens. I think that became very important to me last year. And I think by opening up to the students with respect to all the challenges that even I as a faculty faced, right? Family issues, people are all struggling, students are struggling, faculty is struggling, admin staff is struggling, right? So everyone's struggling with this whole pandemic. So being open about it, being more, sort of, allowing people to discuss that, I think that helped bond a lot more last year. And that helps overcome the online mechanism, right? So those are the ways in which one can actually overcome, and one can still get connected deeper than on a level similar to what you would do in a classroom. So I think this is basically what happened last year.
Well, I guess it's challenging for everybody now, but the way that you've overcome it is really great.
So, with your stint in the corporate industry for 13 years, tell us the importance of an HR personnel in the office, and also please comment on the current practices and developments that have come about in the HR domain. What challenges do you think are yet to be overcome?
Okay. Oh, HR. When I was in Wipro, HR definitely played a big role. They were the ones who hired me. They were the ones who arranged for all the training programs that happened, which were very important in a software environment, right? You need to be up to date with the technology. You need to have access to resources, right? So everything is taken care by the human resources team to make sure that their employees are satisfied, are happy with whatever's happening, and any grievances, any kind of issues are taken care of well before it actually starts becoming a problem to the employee and they decide to leave. So I think all in all, HR is responsible for the entire life cycle of the employee in the organization. So becomes a very crucial role for them, right? So to make sure that once someone enters, they have the longest and most successful stint in the organization, both from a personal development point of view as well as contribute to the organization point of view. So HR is something that can actually make that happen or not happen, right? So becomes a very crucial role, and I think that's what I would have experienced in Wipro. I would have seen the same thing that happened with respect to the human resources professionals in Wipro during my stay there. Um, in terms of trends now, I think the buzz now is what's going to happen with respect to a lot of the changes in the way people are working now, right? So one current thing itself is what's happening with the online. So what are the mechanisms that can allow for working from home? How can that be made in a more manner which is comfortable to the employees? So last year, a lot of things have happened, which HR has played an active role, making sure that things are available to employees at their work, at their homes, right? So certain companies, HR people actually sent office furniture to employees' homes to make sure that they had the right tables, they had their chairs. Forget about the laptop and things like that, desktop, etc. It's also about chair, also about the furniture. So those are the kind of things that matter a lot in terms of handling a situation like what happened last year and what continues to happen now. Then how do you onboard people virtually? So many people last year have joined jobs. They have not even, I think, gone to their base location. They would not have seen their HR in face to face, right? So again, how do you handle that kind of thing? It's very important to build attachment with the organization, and the less you are able to have an employee on campus, the lesser there is that sense of attachment. It has to happen, through online mechanism at the same levels that happens in a campus kind of situation, right? So again, the HR has to work pretty hard in terms of understanding how that can be overcome or how that level can be reached through an online mechanism. So I think that's also big challenge or big trend which is currently happening. It may persist, given that some companies have said that 25% of their workforce will work from home, right? So which means that they have to come up with policies, they have to come up with mechanisms to make sure that those employees are still engaged, they don't feel left out, they don't feel like they're outsiders, and they're still connected and loyal to the organization. Also making sure that their personal development keeps happening. And so I think those are some of the immediate challenges. Attached with that is also in terms of how people's careers are changing. So we are not sticking into one job for a lifetime now. People are moving across jobs. People are doing what is gig kind of work, right? So they are jumping on as a freelancer into many opportunities. So how can HR also handle that? In terms of they may not have employees who are going to stick around for a long time. So how do you manage to get the best for both the company and the employee at the same time, right? So provide for both sides. Again, that's going to be a challenge that's coming up for the HR more and more. I think that's happening quite a lot in India as well. So I think that's going to be another challenge or another thing that HR needs to focus upon.
Great. So could you comment on the procedure for getting accepted into TAPMI, and what should students focus more on when preparing for the same?
Okay. Yeah, so each place is different, right? So but in general what I see is the fact, and I think that kind of attitude that one needs to show as someone who's a quick learner, dedicated learner, able to put hard work and effort into, and like I said, the whole environment of an MBA teaching at top B schools is different, right? So to able to show and sort of convince the people who are maybe in the panel in terms of that you're really able to handle that, and the fact that you really want to do an MBA. Now, like I said, again, it's becoming more of a very standard thing to actually get into an MBA, right? So for various reasons maybe, but this seems to become a stepping stone into the career, right? So again, for me personally, I keep doubting as to why someone wants to do an MBA. So to have that clarity of why an MBA, and if it's specifically about a particular program like an HR or finance, why specifically one wants to do that, why does one want to build a career in that particular function, is also something that one needs to have clarity about, not just jump into it because everyone is doing it. So I'll also do an MBA. I'll also give the cat. I got a good score, so I will just go ahead with it. I think more we want to see is clarity and that kind of surety of putting in effort and learning to actually achieve what your goals are in life. But TAPME specifically, like I mentioned, I'm not a spokesperson for TAPME, so you will have to so I'm giving a very general response. But if you really want specific TAPME related inputs, you will have to speak to someone who's an official spokesperson for TAPME, and I can help you with that. If you want that piece of information, we can connect up with someone else.
Sure, thank you so much for that. So I've got another question for you and then one more. So could you brief us about the syllabus of the OB and HR course and how would it help in shaping the future HRs of the world?
So again, so basically, if you're looking at the HR program, it is going to look at everything that an HR professional does in an organization. So it goes beyond that. It is just not that, because an HR person doesn't exist in vacuum, right? So again, you would find that the HR person needs to know how businesses operate, how businesses work. So it's important for any field. So it's not just HR, even someone who's majoring in finance or operations has to understand what else happens in the organization. So it's important for them to learn everything about the organization. So every function is covered, and those are covered in to the level that is required for a person to understand the business and the function of different departments in the business. The OB and HR part goes much more higher for an HR candidate, obviously. So there's a lot more focus on things like organizational change, organizational development. Then you move to HR specific domains. So compensation, benefits, could be labor laws. A lot of things are changing now with labor laws. So there's labor laws specific. There are performance management related, and because a lot of things about appraisals, how do you handle that, competency mapping, so those are kind of things. How do you design jobs? That is an important aspect of HR. So there are many such courses which delve exactly into what an HR person will do in the organization. So there are courses which will go deeper into each of those specific functions within the HR domain. And so eventually you have someone who has a full 360-degree of the HR person's job, and so the person is well equipped to actually go into the industry and take on the HR role. So that's basically the design of an HR program, and that's what we have in our program as well. Again, like I said, specific things you might want to talk to someone who's maybe the chair of the HR program, right? So
I've seen a lot of Facebook posts from you posting about the photography, your love for the photography and everything. So is it a passion that you developed over time, or it's something like a hobby to you?
For me, actually, I can see myself way back, maybe when I was in early, teens, maybe when I actually had access to a very sleek automatic camera, and I started taking photographs at the family functions. So I used to do that, and so in couple of my cousins marriages, etc., I became sort of the official, family photographer kind of a thing, right? So I think it's been there from quite a long time, my passion towards photography. And so I have been taking photographs, continuously from that time onwards. Um, but I have not gone into actually training myself into photography, right? So I do attend, and I've done at IIM Udaipur also, I've done here also, attend workshops which students organize for photography, which is the basic level. That's all I do. Somehow I don't go into the nuances of trying it out with, the advanced level of maybe a DSLR kind of a, model, right? So my comfort level is to just deal with what I have easily accessible, right? So it happens to be my phone, right? So just pick up my phone, it's there with me all the time. So I don't really go in with the mind for taking a photograph. So I'm walking on the street, and something appeals to me saying that this is a wonderful frame, right? And I want to have something which allows me to take that photograph. So it happens to be my phone. So I'm very comfortable with just sticking with my phone rather than carrying heavy camera. And of course I have a hesitation to learn the DSLR, so I have not tried to venture there. So I'm very happy with my basic understanding of photography, and using my phone to actually just capture things which are very interesting, and which seem to appeal to people. I think a lot of people actually like the framing that I have, so I'm happy with that. So that gives me happiness.
It's very rare that people get to follow their passion and actually pursue it. So I would say it's really inspiring to see a person at your level doing that. So it's great. So here comes our third round. So this is based on rapid fire. I'll be giving you one word or a phrase. Based on that, whatever comes first in your mind, you have to reply in a word or a phrase. So shall we start?
Yeah.
Photography.
Patterns.
Wipro.
Innovation.
Employee.
Happiness.
HR.
Friend.
IIM.
Elite.
TAPME.
Special.
Technology.
Technology. Geek.
Karnataka.
Culture.
Students.
Student. Okay. Education.
Educraft.
Edutech.
Great, nice.
So then we have our next round, which is a situation based round. We called it what if. So I'll be asking you 5 questions and we'll be giving you a situation based on that, and you have to select one. The first question that I would like to ask is, what if you continued your corporate life? What would have been your choice of domain? Technology or HR?
That's a tough one. Probably technology.
Okay.
I'm sorry to disappoint people who think I would have said HR.
No, so this show is all about sharing your experience, being honest, and talking about what you like in your life experience and your choices. So it's great that you're at most honest, and we are really happy to see that. So next question that I have is for you. What if you had not pursued HR and OB, but still wanted to make a change in this domain? What would you have done? Run your own talk show on social media talking about HR and OB, or dedicated a blog on it?
I think I would have gone with the blog.
Blog. Okay. So, as an expert in HR, how important is the appearance of a person to you? Number 1, do not read a book by its cover. Number 2, dressing is the key to a person's personality.
Do not judge a book by its cover.
That's what I was expecting.
Yeah, which is quite difficult. But again, the question that you asked initially about how research
Important.
has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's also, you know, giving the person the time to prove themselves. I think that's also something that you know, being in this field helps. All right.
So the next question I have: list 3 changes that you would have brought about in the corporate culture if you had a magic wand.
You're not giving me options for this.
No, I'm not giving you options. It's an open-ended question.
That's a trick one. Okay. I think one is giving what we call as psychological safety to employees. So making sure that the place is safe for people to voice their opinions. Right. So that's going to be one key change. Um, Second is to give a lot of autonomy and freedom, decision making, and freedom in terms of you know, changing things. Right, so that will be the second one. And third would be to have a really fun place that people can come to on a daily basis. So the place should be a place for fun and work.
Okay. So the next question is something which I'm really keen on knowing. So give one word or a phrase that defines you as a person.
Oh, it's there on my Facebook profile.
That's why I asked.
So there, you know, at least multiple words there. I would pick mysterious.
Okay, that's great. Good to know. And lastly, what is a piece of advice you would like to give to MBA aspirants, your current students, and your ex-students?
Piece of advice.
Yes.
Okay. I would, I think, stick to my general thing that I tell students is to, you know, I think be curious, keep the curiosity running, right? I think that's the route for a lot of things leading to your success, right? So ask questions to yourself, ask questions to others. Don't hesitate. You know, that will lead to innovation. That will lead to, you know, changes, and it might propel you much more faster to you know, to your success than you would be if you're just silently, you know, just looking at things and following what's happening. So be curious, keep asking questions, and of course acting upon, you know, those answers as well. So I think that's probably the single, you know, piece of advice that I would probably want to leave with all my students.
Well, that was great having such a, I would say, interactive session with you, and I hope our audience would enjoy the same. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And
Not a problem at all. Really happy to, you know, share my own experiences. I tend to think a bit different from, you know, the typical mainstream thinking. So I'm really happy to share. So I would encourage people who are listening on and watching this to actually go into LinkedIn. I put a lot of posts there about these thoughts, because many of those I cannot teach in my MBA classroom. Thank you. Take care and have a great time at EduCrack.
So that was all from Professor Srinivasan Tatachari. I hope you all enjoyed the session. For our next episode, we are going to host Professor Sunil Uniguptan. If you guys have any questions regarding MBA, kindly post it in the comment section and we'll help you get the expert advice. Till then, this is your host Akanshi signing off. Keep watching, keep thriving.